Coming up
challenging.
on the Power
But
Portal
you-
podcast.
I know you. I'm sure that you gently affirmed your boundaries and said, "This is what I do."
Well, I probably, I don't know if it was gently.
Okay, so you threw something first
No,
at his head.
I said, the patriarch is dying and the goddess is rising.
And really, that says it all, don't you think? Nice. I'm sorry. Excuse me. That was awesome. The goddess is rising.
Hello, and welcome to the Power Portal podcast with me, Michele DeLuca, and my friend Nancy Proulx. Today we're talking about boundaries and how important they are for your best life. Come and join us.
Today we're talking about boundaries, my favorite topic. It's a topic Nancy teaches about often, and we're going to share some ideas with you about boundaries, whether or not you have them. If you have them, are they strong enough? Are they too strong? All of this can impact your life in a big way, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of lessons with boundaries.
A lot of lessons. So we're just going to chat a minute about who we are. This podcast is called The Power Portal. We came upon that name one day at Niagara Falls State Park when we were trying to figure out what to call our podcast. Standing in front of a sign that you went, oh, it said Power Portal. And you went, there it is. And I said,
Perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
So moving on from there, I am a journalist, lifelong. I'm an author of a couple of books and a filmmaker of sorts. I've made several documentaries and hope to make more in my lifetime. And I am passionate and almost obsessive about learning about what humans are capable of, about our potential. I call myself a human potentialist, and I'm modeling that title over someone who I deeply admire. Her name is Jean Houston, and she's noted throughout the world as a human potentialist. And if you haven't read any of her work, I'll put some in the box below on the YouTube page.
Yeah.
So that's me, Nance. Now, tell us about you.
Well, I think we both have had similar journeys. You and I both met many, many years ago when we were working at the Holistic
that goes back
Center.
even farther.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And so we've had a very similar journey. My first teachers have always been my horses. They're highly sensitive creatures, and working with them on the level that I've worked with them, they can help you jumpstart your intuition, and they've taught me so much, along with many teachers that I have worked with. Carolyn Mace, I did a 4-year intuitive stint with her, and I've done some animal communication training, and then finishing off with equine facilitated learning. So it's kind of brought everything together with teaching us that we need to switch our perspective and learn to live from our inner world versus our outer world. And we're so used to letting everything outside of us dictate who we are.
Oh, my word.
Yeah,
yes.
so I work as a life coach, helping people along on the journey.
And you are a certified intuitive consultant through your 5-year journey with Carolyn Mays, world-renowned medical intuitive, philosopher, best-selling author. Her books will also there will be a link to her books in the YouTube page information section. So as we go along, I'm going to keep adding things there so that those of you who've joined us, and we thank you for that, can enjoy the kind of places that we've come from as well.
Right.
So this thing that we're going to talk about today, boundaries, is already, as I've worked my entire life, I'm 70 now, on my own boundaries, I felt like I was really making some headway about knowing where other people end and I begin, so that I can approach my life with honesty and with that I can be the regulator of my experience rather than other people kind of infiltrating my boundaries and making me feel that I somehow have to fix their lives. That's kind of letting them in too much. I was raised in a household with an Italian mother, and as were you, and it was all about behaving in a certain way that I resisted, but I loved my mother very much, and I tried to do as she wished, but often I did it to my detriment just to make her happy and because I loved her. And I think that's where my boundary issues began.
Mm-hmm. We lose ourselves a little bit with being who the other person wants us to be. And it's programmed into us very, very early in our life, most likely through where we are born in our family. Sometimes they say where you're born, like if you're the oldest or the youngest or in between. I mean, all of that has an effect on us, what our parents have been taught. And I don't think we really need to even dissect it. I think we just need to understand what a boundary is.
Well, let me just say this.
Yeah.
I thought that I thought I was really making some headway. And I know we learn and evolve our whole life long. And I picked up a book as I was exploring this topic, because I knew you were going to talk about the methods you use in your classes and with your horses, or what they've taught you. And I just wanted to kind of touch base with my own boundaries. And I picked up, as I was exploring this issue over the last week or so, I picked up a book by Terri Cole. She's a psychotherapist, and her book is called Boundary Boss. And I realized I have lots of work to do still, because I am a world-class fixer. You come to me with a problem, I can help you fix it. Often, like with my children, they might not listen, but I feel like I'm a competent fixer. And I've really been struggling of late anyway to understand that I am not responsible for fixing all the problems in the world.
You're not responsible, but it's still nice that you offer that. If they're willing to listen, whether they receive it or not is their own. It's the same with healing. You can offer Reiki, but if they're not ready to receive the Reiki, there's going to be no healing.
There'll be a boundary that you can't get through.
Right. So that's really about the other person.
Yes, it
more
is.
than you.
Yes, it is. And I do try. I mean, I do try. I do a lot of acts of service in my life. I try to look after people who don't have anyone else to look after them. And there's a very fine line between doing too much for others and not enough for yourself, and you might do too much for yourself and not enough for others. But I am going to turn the microphones over to you right now, because you are teaching this out in the world, and you teach it without the horses, but it was the horses who taught you about boundaries.
Yeah.
So can you kind of start from there?
So horses obviously are masters at teaching boundaries, because their world is about space. They, in order to feel safe in their space, you'll notice that horses never crowd each other. Okay, when they're running, and nobody runs over each other when they're running from a lion or running. If you see a herd of horses running, do you ever see people running fire out of them?
And they all run and they bump into each other.
Right, because they have this bubble around them. And the reason they have a bubble around them is the same reason we need one, which is they can think clearly and feel themselves.
I like that.
And feel themselves when there's not another, and us humans with horses, we invade their boundaries all the time.
The time.
And we tell them, you have to allow to be touched, you have to allow to be ridden, you have to, we don't even allow the horse to say no. Okay.
So interesting. We do the same with our dogs. Our cats mostly say, yeah, right. But our dogs go like, what do you want me to do? I'll do it. Anything. You want to shut me in this little cage? Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So that understanding of when you or anybody else is anxious, they need more space. Okay. And I've learned this through working with the horses, with the wounded warriors, with the PTS. Because of that, they get overstimulated really quickly.
Let me stop you there for a second, because I just want to affirm that, Nancy, you started your life as an equestrian, drawn into your love for horses by your sister, who later passed away. And this throughout your life, you still have horses now. They've always been an important part of your life. You competed with your horses at a younger age, and eventually, through your work with Carolyn, and then finding out who you were in your search for your work, learned that the animals were communicating with you in a way that you could sense and tell, and help animals speak to their owners and handlers, and eventually came to understand that this was the work you needed to teach, and that you could teach it without the animals. Because it's hard to bring a horse into a classroom, unless your classroom is in a barn, but it gets pricey. And so you've learned somehow to use what the horses have taught you. And so that's what I wanted to
so
insert.
they're nonverbal, okay? And they read your body, they read your emotions, they read your thoughts, your intentions. So when you're working with a horse, you have to become so clear and focused. They're actually great spiritual teachers. You have to clear intention, not a lot of baggage bringing in. And we as empaths, you and I as empaths, we started our life with the thought of less boundaries is better, correct?
Yes, and let's go there for a minute. For those of you who feel as if you're empaths, would you describe what an empath is?
So an empath is somebody who is much more right-brained. They feel and they sense things that are more energetic than the person who is more left-brained and rooted in logic. So learning to trust that part of yourself that's intuitive, that picks up emotions, that picks up the body language, learning to trust that piece of yourself, which the world doesn't really do very well.
No, because I was just thinking, like, I learned how to be, I didn't learn how to be, I became an empath because there was some turmoil. I became an empath, I think, because there was some turmoil in my home growing up. A couple of my brothers, out of my 3 brothers, one is very successful and the most lovely, extraordinary human. The other 2 were tortured, embattled, challenged by drugs, and my house was in chaos a lot. So I learned to go under the radar. It's also how I became a fixer, because I spent a lot of my life looking after all 3 of my brothers and my parents when I could, because I saw that as my work. And that's how I became an empath. Your journey to being an empath, maybe?
Very, very similar. I would sense things. I would sense the feelings of the household, and there was nothing to validate it. Very aware of my connection to the animals and the sensitivity. I think that is something too, that you're much more sensitive to people, to animals. I was very much introduced very early to the intuitive world, although we were taught to keep it underground. And, so I denied my gift of being an empath for a long time.
If I could just hold that thought, you denied your gift, but I think I misspoke, because I didn't learn to be an empath. I think we come in as a personality type. And so we either honor it and try to grow it and work with it and use it, like I believe you have, and as I've tried to, or we are taught that it's something to suppress. And no, carry on.
Right. I think this is a good place for me to read this. So Michele and I decided we were going to talk about boundaries, and lo and behold, I tune in and say, okay, let's see what needs to be said, and this shows up on my computer. So empathy without boundaries is self-destruction.
Ow. Yes. Okay.
Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance.
That's a favorite of mine too.
You got to train your boundaries to be stronger than your soft heart, and your mind to be stronger than your feelings. Otherwise, you'll be drained. So be kind and take no shit. So our generation,
underline that part.
Our generation as children, we weren't taught that.
No, especially culturally. I don't know if I said the author's name. So I picked up this book by Terri Cole, Boundary Boss. And she said she wrote it really for women, even though she said these are issues that impact men too, but that historically and culturally throughout the world and in our country, it's only been 100 years since women really got some freedom and weren't being owned by their husbands and got the vote 100 or so years. Historically and culturally, women have a place in the home, and you go, oh, we'll come into 2025, Michele, but we, there are generations where we have to almost like remove the shackles of the boundaries that hold us back, even when we're not aware of them. When people treat us a certain way because we're women, I don't care who you are, but you have to admit that happens in many places where women, it's happening right now in the military, where there's some debate about whether or not women belong on the front lines. I'm not sure. Culturally, that's something we have to decide, I think, as a nation. But women certainly are as competent as men in many areas of life. They often can't lift men over their heads, but sometimes they make up for that in intellectual cleverness.
Right. And hopefully we're heading into a more peaceful time.
Hopefully we're heading into a more peaceful time, yes. Your lips to God's ears.
So, my idea of boundaries is to have a screen door, okay? There are either no boundaries and everything is allowed in, or people have walls up, instead of a screen door where you allow what you want to come through and you can stop, the garbage, the dust, and keep that outside. But that takes being really anchored in yourself and being very aware. And like I said, anchored in the self. And it's about, okay, I have to know my own truth. I have to know my own values. I have to know what I'm feeling. If I'm triggered, if I'm feeling, when we meet somebody, we know right away. Okay, this person either you could, and maybe everybody doesn't, but you can either feel, there's a wall up around this person.
Oh, my goodness. I think people sometimes feel it, but they think it's their imagination.
Yeah. Or you walk into a room.
And you can already tell who's pissed off.
Right. Yeah, you immediately know, something, there's some people here that have maybe really heavy pain body going on.
Okay, that's a whole nother podcast, the pain body, of course. But it does fit in here somewhere, because that's why we erect the boundaries sometimes, so that we keep people possibly much further away. I know that exploring my life, especially over the last couple of days reading this book, I realized that some of my boundaries still need attention. That I have literally walled myself off and said, I will do it. You don't have to do it. I don't ask anyone for anything, typically. I've just now started asking my husband for things, to do things for me. Can you pick that up? I have been so freaking independent that only in this part of my life, I literally ask no one for anything unless there's something I can provide of value in return, and it's not even a bargaining. It's like, I know I can, there's like, well, if I do this for you, can you do this for me? That I'll allow myself, but boundaries are challenging. And if you don't have proper boundaries, it can really diminish your life. So let's talk about how you began to learn about boundaries.
Actually, one of the exercises we do with the horses when we first begin with this, we'll groom a horse, but we have to pay attention to the body language of the horse and also how we're feeling within ourselves. So first of all, if somebody's who's never been around a horse goes to groom the horse to step in, how do they feel? Do they feel comfortable? Or are they just doing this because I'm telling them this is what you have to do? Okay, you have to go in, pick up a brush the horse. They may have questions and need something that will help them settle. Like, maybe you need to come in with me for the first time when I touch this horse.
So let me just put a timing on this. This was somewhere in your career as an equestrian and a horse owner and lover. After you did your work with Carolyn, it started to become clearer to you, or were you already aware of this behavior?
No, the horses, and I still do this work with the equine facilitated learning, and it's just the basics of it. So I need to it's intersubjective. I have to pay attention to myself and the horse at the same time. Basic boundary rule. Okay, if the horse approaches me, I get to set the boundary.
Nice.
Okay. If I approach the horse gets to set the boundary. Okay. What is the space that's comfortable? Now, if I was sitting on top of you, how does this feel?
Well, a little close to me. Yes.
Okay. Would you be able to say, can you move away?
Yes, or I would just start moving away from you.
Right. Yeah. And we don't even recognize that with somebody who's standing too close to us. We start leaning backwards or something. So it's all about being aware of your own body language when you're with someone, because your body language will tell so much. Are you standing with your hands across your solar plexus?
I stand like that a lot. And then sometimes I'll cross my legs. It's like, go ahead.
So, watching your own body language, basic things. Watching your triggers when somebody tells you to do something. Am I reacting because somebody's just telling me what to do? And this is where you have to do the work, the inner work, or because I just don't like being told what to do,
Right.
or I don't want to be told by that person what to do. But they might have every right to tell you
Well,
what to
or
do.
they really need to tell you
Yeah.
what you need to do because they know and you don't.
Right. Yeah. And then, I mean, it can go so many layers. For me, I recognize how I destroy my own boundaries by being critical of myself.
Ooh, right.
So it's like, I mean, there's so many levels to boundaries.
Actually, Nancy and I have been in her barn where she demonstrated for me, and I believe we have a video of that, which I will look for and put up if I can find it. You demonstrated in a fashion how to approach a horse and how you can tell whether or not you're moving in too close, because the horse responds by
fight or flight, either
swishing his tail or
moving its head this way to I'm leaving,
Uh-huh.
or turning towards you, as long as their ears aren't back and they're not flat back where they're saying I'm going to attack you. Okay, because a horse is fight or flight. Okay.
It's fascinating work working in the barn with you.
Yeah.
And I recall at one point we were doing something where if you don't stand in your truth and your presence with a horse, the horse will indicate that by, again, same thing, behaviors that Nancy recognizes and points out. If you're not standing, at this time we were in the barn together and we were talking, or you were asking me questions, or something happened, but I stood there with that horse and really tried to get to the bottom of an issue that I was feeling. And it was about my young son being away from home and how I hadn't yet told him how deeply I missed him. I was trying to protect him. I was trying to protect his boundaries by not saying, oh my God, I miss you so much. But it occurred to me that I probably should, I'm acting like, oh, you're away from home? I won't see you for weeks at a time? That's fine, honey. when I should say, I love you so much. I deeply miss you, but I'm so happy for you. And I'm fine in this deeply missing, because it's teaching me how much I love not just you, but both my sons, my family, being surrounded by them. It was such an awareness. And all I did was stand next to Nancy's horse.
And I think the horse showed like a relaxation when you got into your truth. And that's where, that is honoring your own boundary, okay, of what you're feeling too in that moment. And the horse wants you to be fully in your truth. And when we're fully in our truth and being honest and we're not hiding anything, when we try to hide our emotion, the horse, like an empath, is going to feel that. They might not know exactly what it is, but they're going to feel in your energy field this disconnect, like you're not quite present, you're not deep in your groundedness within yourself.
Horses really partner with us in the very best spiritual way, don't they? And that's impossible for people to believe. They just think horses are horses, and you ride them on a trail, and they're kind of work horses. That's where the term comes from. They just kind of walk along, but inside, they've kind of, especially in cases like those trail horses, they just leave us. That's how they become so docile and so obedient. They
numb out.
They numb out.
Same the way people numb out.
Good. That's a great point. Now. Tell me a little bit about these class environments and what you do to get people, because, okay, so what does this have to do with boundaries, Nancy? You just came in really close to me, and, we are dear friends. I love you. So that should have been super comfortable, but I apparently even my own children getting that close as adults would kind of cause me like, okay, honey, that's, why is that? What is that?
I think it's in everybody's personal space is different for each person. My son is like, I want to sit on this side of the couch, and when he needs to de-stress or he just wants to be, he doesn't want to be touched. It's just it does not mean that he does not love his wife. It does not mean that he's not connected. And even though we have some distance or space, we are still connected.
And like a horse, he's just swishing his ear or his tail that has to give me a minute.
Yeah.
So my boundaries, let's go back to that, or
Okay.
yours. Pick one. the thing that you teach is, I have these boundaries and I just realized that I'm still dealing with, I will do this, I will take care of this, I'm not going to ask anyone for help. That is a boundary. That doesn't feel like a healthy boundary. Are these the kind of boundaries we're talking about?
Sometimes it's a perspective change. I can remember when we were younger. My kids are a lot younger than my husband's family's children, and so when we grew up, my husband and I were first married, we had so many birthday parties and things for all the kids. Well, by the time my kids were early teens and we were doing birthday parties, it was like that half of the family was not interested. They had done it.
Yeah.
They were done.
Another birthday party.
Yeah, another birthday party. Got to buy another gift. And I remember my son saying, "Yeah, I keep hanging the same shirt in my closet from somebody that would get the same shirt every single year." It was like, and we laughed about it. And I said, "Okay, so how do I deal with this in a way? You know what? I really love to get together with my family." And I just decided, Joel, we're gonna do a birthday party, but we're not gonna say it's your birthday or anything. We'll have a cake for you. We're just getting together. We'll celebrate your birthday. And so I had a whole perspective change, okay, where it was like, we don't necessarily have to have it under this tradition where everybody has to.
No, and he doesn't really want that same shirt again anyway.
And
so
it just lifted everything and made it so much lighter. And so that was a perspective change that helped rearrange my boundaries. It wasn't as rigid as I had this rigid boundary of how I expected things and people to show up.
And certainly boundaries are all about perspective. There's nothing physical happening when you tighten your boundaries or when you loosen them. In my case, I think that being more open to getting help from others, from any others, is probably a good thing. Now that makes my boundary a little more porous. Also, there's going to be a chance someone's going to say, "Well, I don't want to do that," or "Can't you do it yourself?" or "Why do I have to do that?" And then I'm going to have to, instead of getting upset, like commend myself for saying, "Well, at least you asked."
Right.
That was really the goal here.
Right.
But let's go back to your classroom environment. Tell me what is it that I'll learn if I stand with you? Because in your classroom now, there are no horses.
Right. Well, we just do some exercises, walking into each other's energy fields.
As you just did with me, right?
And understanding that. And that's a really powerful exercise. But I think just, having them do introspective work on who are they, recognize, am I a person that is always into everybody else's energy and never coming back to myself, or am I that person who is just into myself and I don't have compassion and I don't get into anybody else's energy? And that might be just because of protective mechanism. Maybe they've been victimized and they're like, "Well, I'm just going to stay right here and not care about anybody else." So it's all about really them getting to their truth and me leading them to it and feeling, as I'm talking to them, you might want to go a little deeper. Think about that even a little bit more, and go in a little bit more and try to bring up what the root cause is.
That's fascinating. I keep thinking back to a chapter in this book that I'm reading on boundaries that I mentioned, Terri Cole's book on Boundary Boss, and she talks about going into your basement. And for me, that really struck a chord, because I know all my boundary issues start in my subconscious, the basement, because I deliberately remember setting them up when I was a child. My mother, I was always worried. First of all, I wanted her to know that I loved her, especially as I got older. And she was very particular about how she wanted me to behave. So I had to navigate between how she wanted me to behave and how I was happy behaving. And so I feel like the boundary was always moving. And then eventually, when she got older and she was so sick and nothing anyone did really, it was really challenging to be with her, then I just thought to myself, I'm going to treat her as a small child who is inconsolable right now, and I'm going to hold my boundary and be in my centered presence as a mature grown-up and love her through this temper tantrum And I'm not sure even today if that was a good boundary, or if I allowed her to get away with too much. That's always the challenge of boundaries, I think.
I think it just, you have to kind of go within and say, am I finished with this? Did I process it? And if it is,
that's what I came to this week.
Yeah. Did I process it? I mean, I certainly grew up with having to be the perfect child, because it's very similar to you. There was my sister wasn't mentally well for a long time. And so you become the person who is the emotional sponge of the family, and you learn how to navigate it and be who you need to be in order to not cause any more disruption in the house. So that, it's not about clearing up, yes, it's about forgiving my parents, that this is what I came in here to learn. It's part of what I came in here to learn.
Both of us believe that the things that present our greatest challenges are really something we may have chosen as souls for our own personal and spiritual evolution.
Yeah. But I do believe that you don't have to go into the past. You can go to forgive, but you will get every opportunity in living life to just examine,
look at it again,
and be truthful with yourself, and look at it and look at what's my motivation and my agenda for doing this. And for, if you're just, putting the party on, okay, because you have to.
Well, that just makes everybody mad. So
right, especially
come on
me.
in,
right,
have some cake.
Yeah. So it's all about looking at your agenda and your motivation.
And I can see that in my own life now, even because she says go back and look at your triggers from your youth. I've been looking at those triggers as I've been evolving as a human throughout my whole life, looking at the triggers. Am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But this is one more opportunity, this conversation, the things that you've discussed about what occurs in your classroom environment. Can the exercise that you're talking about is not just moving closer to someone. How does that work in your classroom? I mean, what can we learn about that? You said we learn a lot about just that that simple movement.
Well, we are actually in each other's personal
we
space
are right
now.
Absolutely, we are
but
close.
Just to kind of know it and to honor it. I used to think, well, you know what, if you hug someone, they're just going to show that, you're compassionate and you're open. But there's a lot of people that don't want to be hugged. They don't want to be touched. And I was not honoring that person again. So it's about every interaction, watching to understand, oh, what's their language coming to me? Or did I just walk through their boundary? And so it's it's about just doing that work of understanding what I feel and what I see is truth. But to me it's even that's like the basic of it. Even like talking about the other day I had an incident that we were talking about. We have somebody in the family that's ill, and I'm very intuitive. My daughter's very intuitive, and we're very much into the healing of through spirit and connecting to your spirit and trusting your intuition and trusting what you get. And my husband, who's actually kind of panicking right now because we have somebody who's seriously ill,
yes.
And he's just one of those left brain rational medicine. And I'm like, well, no, you have to also get the best medicine in the world. If you don't go and look at your root cause, which starts in the emotional and mental field, which is everything I learned from Carolyn Mace, he wanted to hear nothing of it. And I'm like, I'm not suppressing my gifts, and we had this conversation, and I'm like, this is my gift, okay? This is my truth. He so did not want me to be that or to trust that part of myself. And I just had to say, this is my gift. I can't suppress it.
In his defense, he is always very supportive of your work as an intuitive healer, without question.
Yeah, but this is scaring him.
It's so close. Someone he loves deeply is ill, and he just wants to fix it as left brain as possible.
Yes.
Let's get the right doctors. We want the right treatment.
Yes, and that is important.
Yes,
it is important.
You did a really nice job of saying, okay, I get that about you, and I know that this is distressing, but you want me to deny the fact that I know other things about healing, and that I would like to use those as well, or at least give him some guidance, give this person some more holistic guidance. And so it's a challenge, and but I know you. I'm sure that you gently affirmed your boundaries and said, "This is what I do."
Well, I probably. I don't know if it was gently.
Okay, so you threw something first at his head.
I said, the patriarch is dying and the goddess is rising.
And really that says it all, don't you think? Nice. I'm sorry, excuse me. That was awesome. The goddess is rising. Listen to me. If we ever needed the goddess to rise, it's right now. To kind of give this world a shake and say, all right, everybody behave.
Yes.
Stop it.
Yeah, so...
So, a message to wrap this all up. What do you think?
I think that the book that you recommended.
It's a great book. I'm going to go back and read it again because I do have work to do. And I'm going to sit through your next class on boundaries because I love that work. You can really go sit close to somebody and see where your boundaries are, or ask them to sit close to you and you'll see exactly. And if they're porous, you can be more inviting and welcoming. But on the other hand, don't let people into your boundaries if their intention is not to also be reverent of your space.
Sometimes you can love someone from afar, but if they are porous, they probably they could give me a call and we could do some work together, because porous isn't about changing your outer world. Porous is about working and changing your inner world.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's the work you do on yourself, okay, to tie up all your loose ends so there's no Velcro. And not that we'll ever get to the place of no Velcro. No. We're living on this earth.
Yes.
But, less and less and more aware. And you make adjustments quicker.
Aww. No, I just want to say thank you. That's beautiful boundary work. And that's wonderful. I appreciate all the work you've done with the horses.
Fun, yeah.
Yes, it is so much fun. And check below on the YouTube page. I know this is our podcasts are on Spotify as well. And if you're on the YouTube page, give us a like, subscribe.
Yeah.
We would appreciate that. We always talk about fun things. It's what we would talk about if we were going out to lunch, but instead we decided to do a podcast.
This is our service.
This is our service, yes, to share our lives with you and our stories and our attempts to evolve, so that we can all grow together and create a better world. So thanks, Nancy.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle.
All right, next time. See ya. Bye.